Coming up in today's newscast, Israel's First Lady tragically passes away. The U.S. Embassy is set to hold 4th of July celebrations in Jerusalem, and a Lebanese monkey is still on the loose in northern Israel. It's been the start of a tough day here in Israel. The First Lady of Israel and the wife of President Reuven Rivlin has just passed away. Nechama Rivlin left the world on Tuesday morning at the age of 73, just one day before her 74th birthday. Mrs. Rivlin has been suffering from pulmonary fibrosis, and she underwent a lung transplant in Beilinson Hospital earlier this year. Even though the surgery was a success, the First Lady was left in serious condition, suffering from shortness of breath due to cardiac complications. Throughout the last couple of months of her illness, medical teams from the lung, cardiology, and intensive care units wouldn't leave her bedside. President Rivlin has released a statement thanking the Beilinson Hospital for their treatment of his wife. Nechama Rivlin was born in 1945 in Moshav Herut, a community founded by her parents in what was then mandatory Palestine. Her mother's entire family was killed in the Holocaust, but her mother and father came to Israel from Ukraine, and her father passed away when she was just 5 years old, leaving her mother to tend to their farm and orchard all on her own. Nechama said in a 2016 Haaretz article that she's always, quote, pinned her hopes in admiration of the female pioneers that came to Palestine, the land of Israel, to build a country when it was a far-off dream. And Nechama herself is being praised by Prime Minister Netanyahu and his wife for her own heroic fight for her life. Mrs. Rivlin worked as a researcher at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in the fields of zoology, ecology, and genetics before retiring in 2007. And she even debuted her vocal skills by voicing a character in the movie version of one of her favorite childhood stories, Paddington Bear 2. The multi-talented woman leaves behind her husband, the president, 3 children, and numerous grandchildren. All right, new video footage of a sophisticated tunnel passing deep underground from Lebanon into Israel has just been revealed to the public by the Israeli army. The IDF says the tunnel was dug and planned to be used by Lebanese Hezbollah militants.
We're standing inside a Hezbollah cross-border attack tunnel that was dug from the civilian village of Ramya, almost a kilometer away inside Lebanon, under the blue line, leading into Israel, at a maximum depth of 80 meters, which is like 22 stories of a building, leading into Israel. The tunnel being shown has been rigged with electrical wiring, fuse boxes, and communications equipment. An army spokesman says it's almost a kilometer long, beginning in Lebanon, and reaching about 80 meters into Israeli territory, near the town of Zarit. Hezbollah dug this tunnel, as well as other tunnels, in order to have the ability to surprise Israeli civilians and the IDF inside Israel and to attack Israel. After Operation Northern Shield, Hezbollah no longer has the ability to conduct such attacks against Israel.
The Israeli army allegedly found the tunnel earlier this year during an operation in which even more attack tunnels dug by Hezbollah were discovered. The leader of the Lebanese terror organization, Hassan Nasrallah, says that his group has been able to enter Israel for years, but he hasn't actually acknowledged that the tunnels were the handiwork of Hezbollah. The Army Ombudsman, Major General Yitzhak Brik, has just released a report claiming that the Israeli army is not prepared for imminent war. But even though the IDF claims to be implementing a major internal reform, Brik doesn't think it's enough. Joining us now to discuss this issue is Brigadier General Ram Shmueli. Ram, thank you so much for coming in. Now, Major General Brik says that there's a serious organizational issue in the army and that it's actually part of the culture. What does that mean, and what is your take on this?
To defend a country, you need a good army, a good armed forces, and of course you need the equipment, you need people, and most important is to have the right spirit. And I think that the Israeli armed forces in a whole, even though I'm an Air Force general, but I know the other part of the armed forces of Israel, I think that we have the right equipment. I think that we have great people. And I think that the real challenge is the spirit. I think that the spirit of the commander in the Israeli armed forces is in the right direction, since we have a right cause. We have to defend the people of Israel. this is not say that we don't have things to fix. And General Brick, he got a lot of experience in the past. He's a hero. He's a war hero. He nominate or point on some challenges that we have to fix. I believe that the Air Force that I know is in the right capability to defend the state of Israel. I believe that the Navy as well, and my son is a Navy commander, so I have kind of a window what's happened there. Mm-hmm. Even my young son, our young son is an infantry warrior, and I saw the last 3.5 years, and then in the Operation Protective Edge, how they operate. I really think that we have a very strong armed forces, but we have a lot of things to fix.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I think one of what is very interesting is actually this week we reported on the fact that the Israeli army is trying to essentially implement a reform in terms of training soldiers, because there have been several incidents in the West Bank where there have been terrorist assailants that have shot down multiple people and managed to escape, and then have been on the loose for several days, with soldiers seemingly unable to react or not knowing how to appropriately react to these situations. What is your take on that? Is there an issue in how the IDF is training soldiers to respond to incidents of terror?
Yes, when you fight in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, this is not a war, this is kind of counter-terrorism. So it's a different war. So I think that our soldiers prove themselves in the way they do the terrorism, preventive terrorism. But when there is a need for conquer land, like in Gaza Strip, which can happen, or like in Lebanon, that we have to conquer the territory in order to win the war, in order to bring the war into the enemy territory, it needs two things, for this couple. First of all, the army have to be capable to do it. I think they're capable to do and to conquer land and to win the war in the enemy territory. But second, most important, is the leaders, the political leaders, that have to decide that the army is able to do it. And those two partners have to feel each other. And I think that there is a problem in believing that maybe it is not a good idea to get into enemy territory and just use the Air Force. Just use the Air Force is very good, but it is not enough.
Interesting. Well, the political comment that you made there stands out to me, because are you, I guess, insinuating that maybe the government should not be getting into the ins and outs of the specific ways that soldiers react to incidents? Elor Azaria as an example?
Yes, it's a question of confidence. I can tell the people who take the decision that if it's needed, I don't want to do it, but if it's needed in order to emerge, in order to fight the Hamas inside Gaza Strip, the armed forces can do it. Of course, with the help of the Air Force, but still you have to be boots on the ground.
Okay.
And if it's needed in the north, it can be done. Maybe a lot of casualties, but if there is no other possibility to win the war, you have to go inside.
Okay, well, we can get, I mean, there are obviously several other complaints that Brick made regarding the status of the army, difficulty in integrating new weaponry as an example. But what I'd like to ask you is what you view to be the biggest threat that the IDF faces right now. I mean, we have tunnels in the north, sporadic attacks taking place in the West Bank, Iran and Syria. There's an array of issues.
First of all, I feel that we are in a good condition. Our capability to protect the state of Israel is good. Of course, the threat from the north, the rockets from Hezbollah, and now the rockets or the establishment of the Iranian capabilities in Syria, all the northern front, this is the most dangerous part or the most challenge to the Israeli armed forces. But I feel, and I recommend them not to try to hit us too strong, because it will come a time that we will have to retaliate very devastating. And it is not good for the country of Lebanon, and it is not good for the region.
All right. Well, Brigadier General, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and have a wonderful day.
You too.
Now it's time for our daily update on the state of politics in Israel. As the parties prepare for the upcoming elections, a lot of changes seem to be coming down the line. Right now, Prime Minister Netanyahu is expected to tap a new interim justice minister after legal officials reportedly informed him that he could not serve as acting minister of the office that is set to indict him. On Sunday, Netanyahu fired Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked and Education Minister Naftali Bennett. The Israeli leader originally said he would fill their positions immediately, but by Monday morning it was reported that he would wait until next week to make the appointments. The announcement has sparked outrage among law enforcement officials who believe that Netanyahu serving as Justice Minister is a conflict of interest. Knesset members Rafi Peretz and Bezalel Smotrich from the Union of Right-Wing Parties are pushing for Netanyahu to appoint them as Education and Justice Ministers respectively. But it looks like Netanyahu has gotten into a bit of a spat with Smotrich. Netanyahu is publicly speaking out against the aspiring justice, who's calling for the Israeli justice system to adhere to Jewish religious law. The Israeli Prime Minister is tweeting that just won't happen, and it looks like for once he's in agreement with the co-leader of the Blue and White Party, Yair Lapid, who's of the same opinion. Smotrich says he wants to gradually transition Israel into a religious state by implementing laws from the Torah and granting the rabbinical courts a higher status. Netanyahu is rumored to prefer Likud Minister Yariv Levin for the job of Justice Minister. It's now also being reported that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has offered the UN ambassador post to Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan. If truly selected, Erdan would replace the current ambassador Dani Danon, whose term ends in a few weeks. Both Netanyahu and Erdan have refused to comment on the report, although Erdan has turned down the offer twice in recent years. To many, that's no surprise, since the UN posting is often seen as a mission impossible job, since Israel is constantly attacked diplomatically. In the meantime, Netanyahu will continue serving as Prime Minister, Defense Minister, and Health Minister. It looks like the American state of Florida has just signed a new bill against anti-Semitism into law. The legislation defines anti-Semitism as any call for violence against Jews, support for conspiracy theories about Jewish control, and applying double standards to the state of Israel. What are double standards, you ask? Well, the bill basically says applying double standards to Israel is requiring the country to behave in a manner that's not expected of any other democratic nation. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis officially signed the bill into law on Friday in Tallahassee, just 2 days after a ceremonial signing in Jerusalem. The legislation also forbids Holocaust denial and mandates that discrimination against Jewish people be treated the same way as acts of racial discrimination in Florida's public education system. The Florida governor says he's proud to sign the bill into law, adding that there's, quote, no place in Florida or its educational institutions that will tolerate discrimination against the Jewish people. It looks like the U.S. Embassy in Israel will be holding its annual 4th of July celebration in Jerusalem for the first time ever. Traditionally, the event has been held at the home of the U.S. ambassador in Herzliya. Current U.S. Ambassador David Friedman has moved into a residence in western Jerusalem, in a building that formerly functioned as a consulate. But last year, just 2 months after the U.S. Embassy was moved to Jerusalem, American Independence Day celebrations were held in Airport City near Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport. This year, July 4th celebrations will be held in the International Convention Center in Jerusalem, as part of an effort to be consistent with the embassy's move to Jerusalem. The United States fulfilled the 1995 Jerusalem Embassy Act last year, which called for the U.S. to move its embassy to the Holy City. Current President Donald Trump's 3 predecessors failed to comply with the act, exercising a clause that allowed them to waiver due to national security concerns. Presidents Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton made it clear that the status of Jerusalem should be determined in a peace agreement. Very sad news here. The last living Holocaust survivor of the Sobibor death camp, a camp where many of my own family members were killed, has just passed away in central Israel. 97-year-old Semyon Rosenfeld is being hailed as a hero for not only having survived the Holocaust, but for his brave revolt against the Nazis. Rosenfeld was born in the small Ukrainian town of Ternikiva in 1922, and he joined the Red Army in 1940. While he was away fighting the Germans, his entire family was murdered by the Nazis and buried in a mass grave near his hometown. In 1941, Rosenfeld was captured by the Nazis and eventually sent to the Sobibor death camp in Poland in 1943. Over 250,000 Jews were killed in the notorious extermination camp between 1942 and 1943. But Rosenfeld said that he was able to survive by lying about his profession. Instead of being sent to the crematorium like the rest of the prisoners, he was sent to work in a carpentry shop. And then, in October of 1943, Rosenfeld did the unthinkable. He and 300 other prisoners attempted to revolt and flee the camp. They managed to kill 11 Nazi camp officers before their plan was discovered, but most of them ended up being killed or rounded up by the Nazis. Rosenfeld survived by hiding in the woods until 1944 with a handful of other prisoners, until he could rejoin the Red Army and participate in the capture of Berlin. In 1945, he moved back to his homeland of Ukraine after surviving the war, but in 1990, Rosenfeld finally decided to immigrate to Israel. The brave hero is survived by his 2 sons and 5 grandchildren. Now, the loss of Holocaust survivor Simon Rosenfeld is especially sad for me because I myself lost several family members in the Sobibor death camp. In fact, it was because of the death of one of them that I was reunited with dozens of long-lost family members a mere 2 years ago. So in honor of the victims, we will tell this story again. What if you got a call one day saying that you may be related to Anne Frank? Oh, and by the way, you have an entire family that you never even knew existed. Sounds crazy, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to me, and this is how it started.
The pendant belonged to a girl called Caroline Cohn.
Carolina Cohen, שנולדה בתאריך הזה בפרנקפורט.
There's a young Jewish girl named Caroline Cohn. Carolyn Kahn, who was born on the date and in the city.
On January 15th, a series of stories broke out across international news. A pendant had been found in the Sobibor concentration camp. It turns out it was identical to Anne Frank's pendant. That pendant belonged to a little girl named Carolina Cohen. Carolina was from Frankfurt, Germany, just like my grandfather and his family. My grandpa, Martin M. Katz, had always talked proudly about his Frankfurt German roots, but just 3 days before this story broke, he passed away. Fast forward now to January 16th, I had to fly back to Israel from the United States where I had just been by my grandfather's side. I'm a total mess. So the next day I get back to the news studio where I'm just convinced that going back to work is going to help me take my mind off of everything. And lo and behold, I end up covering this story about Anne Frank. There's been a stunning find of a pendant historians believe may have once belonged to a Holocaust victim related to the famed Anne Frank. Hi, Chaim. Carolina Cohen is my grandfather's cousin then.
So Carolina's father, Richard, was first cousin of Max Katz.
No. That's Chaim Motzen. He saw the story on the news and decided to use his incredible research skills to trace Carolina Cohen's family. And it turns out Carolina Cohen's grandma was my great-great-great-grandfather's sister.
27 relatives from around the world are flying in to come to the event.
So this is why I am now speaking to you from Frankfurt, Germany, where I'm about to meet dozens of long-lost family members that I had no idea ever existed.
So we're cousins through the mother.
That's Cynthia and that's Jackie Bruckman. We're
Third cousins, twice removed.
You lived in the same neighborhood as me in Brooklyn from what years?
We may have been sitting next to each other in the same cafe.
And that's my cousin Sonia Kunkel.
We're very happy for our children, and you've got to meet them.
No, I have to meet them.
They're your cousins, yeah?
And they're my age, too,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
And this cousin of mine, Krista Nelson, might have been the most thrown off by this entire story. Did you know that you had a Jewish background before this?
Absolutely not, until I received a phone call from Chaim in April.
And that's my grandpa's third cousin, Ernie Heinemann.
Welcome to our home.
Our home.
Ernie was born.
He's a Holocaust survivor. He was born in Germany, but he had to escape from the Nazis when he was just a toddler. We're having our morning coffee before we go out.
We're going to Weinheim to Hauptstrasse to see the place where Dad was born and where the family lived for many generations until they were forced to sell the house during the war.
You know, for me, losing my grandfather this year was very tough. So I'm excited to meet Opa.
Yeah. My new granddaughter.
Exactly.
to be our grandfather's upholstery store business. And my father used to work with him.
And this would have been your store. This is where you would have grown up.
Well, I
if the
don't know
circumstances would have been different.
Much, much different. We were very lucky in a sense that we survived because we had a lot of incidents where we wouldn't be here. We would be with Carolina right now. And this is a great honor having all these new cousins and new friends I have here, and these extraordinary people researching our lives.
The pendant that we find it very close to the cut-in-hair barrack and undressing barrack.
At just 14 years old, Carolina was stripped and shaven, and then sent to the Sobibor gas chambers, murdered, along with her entire family.
Probably, the pendant of Carolina Cohen fell between the two beams of the wood of the floor of this barrack.
This is the location of the last home that Carolina Cohen and her family voluntarily lived in. Was it an accident or an act of defiance? I like to think, or should I say we like to think, that Carolina took back control in her final moments of life. Her pendant left behind to reunite her family.
Say family.
Family! Woo! Today, there are so many ways to travel around Jerusalem, whether it's by train, bus, bicycle, or foot. But what if you could get around the Golden City with a killer view from up above? That's just what the tourism ministry is trying to make happen by building a cable car to Jerusalem's historic Old City. And now their plans have just cleared yet another hurdle. The $55 million project now requires approval by the Israeli government to proceed. The plan has actually received a lot of backlash for being obtrusive and culturally and politically irresponsible, and it's been so controversial that it produced a battery of petitions against it. Now, the National Infrastructure Committee has rejected those petitions, meaning the project may move ahead faster than we think. The cable car would pick up tourists from the renovated First Station complex, which is on the site of the former train station in West Jerusalem. It would then span across valleys and run past the old city's urban walls. The tourism ministry believes the cable car system will not only be a major attraction for tourists, but will also help solve traffic congestion and pollution around the old city walls. Supporters believe the cable car will be the most environmentally friendly and least disruptive way to get up to 3,000 visitors each hour from West Jerusalem to the Western Wall. Tourism in Jerusalem has risen significantly over the past year, with over 4 million visitors coming into the Holy City. And now tourists may have an entirely new reason to visit, whether or not that's a good thing. All right, watch out, everybody, because a monkey is still on the run in northern Israel. Yes, I'm totally serious. You might remember a report a couple of days ago revealing that a monkey from a Lebanese farm had crossed the border into Israel, all in an apparent escape from the farm he was living on. And he still seems to be enjoying life on the run. The primate has been filmed sightseeing in the village of Deir el-Assad in the Upper Galilee, just about 25 kilometers away from where it escaped. Locals apparently tried to capture the monkey by placing a trap in the schoolyard where it was last seen, but failed to lure him in. Police have confirmed that they're trying to help the Nature and Parks Authority in capturing the furry guy, but so far all efforts have come up empty-handed. The vervet monkey has been living at the Ship of Peace farm, which is run by a French nun in southern Lebanon, but clearly wanted to explore the greater outside. And he's doing just that by climbing over the Lebanese border fence into Israel. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. It's a hot 29 degrees Celsius or 84 degrees Fahrenheit with sunny skies today. Tomorrow is expected to be even warmer with a high of 31 degrees Celsius or 87 Fahrenheit. But skies will be partly cloudy. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.61 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please subscribe at iltv.tv. And finally, don't forget to like us on Facebook at Israel English News and follow us on Twitter, of course, at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.